The quantum communication array hummed with a frequency that defied traditional human understanding. Captain Elena Rodriguez knew something was different the moment the first anomalous reading flickered across her station's holographic displays. Galileo Deep Space Research Station hung in the void between Earth's solar system and the Kuiper Belt, a testament to humanity's relentless push into the unknown. Officially, it was a research outpost. Unofficially, it was humanity's first line of defense, a secret that only a handful of people truly understood. RIA, run a full spectrum analysis, Elena commanded, her voice steady despite the electric tension building in the station's cramped command center. The AI's holographic interface shimmered to life, a translucent form that looked almost human, but not quite. Analyzing, Captain. RIA responded, her voice a perfect blend of computational precision and subtle emotional undertone. Micro-fluctuations in the surrounding quantum field began to resolve into a pattern that made Elena's spine tense. Dr. Kamil Hassan, the station's chief xenobiologist, approached the main display. His dark eyes narrowed, decades of research crystallizing into a moment of terrible recognition. "Those energy signatures," he muttered, "they're not like anything in our databases." The holographic display erupted with cascading data streams. Massive energy signatures were emerging from a region of space that should have been empty, a void between known stellar mapping coordinates. Something was coming. Something big. Elena's augmented neural interface, a cutting-edge biological quantum hybrid system, began processing information faster than any standard human brain could comprehend. Fragments of potential scenarios, probability matrices, and tactical assessments flickered through her consciousness. RIA accessed the classified first contact protocols, she said, her tone sharp and clear. The AI's response was instantaneous, initiating Omega-level defense sequence. Quantum communication arrays are now in full adaptive mode. Stealth systems engaging. Outside the station's reinforced hull, a series of seemingly innocuous communication satellites began to reconfigure. What appeared to be standard research equipment transformed, nanomaterials shifting and realigning with a precision that would have been impossible just a decade earlier. Dr. Hassan's hand moved to the emergency communication console. "Should we alert Earth Command?" Elena's laugh was short and humorless. "They're already watching. This isn't our first potential threat, Camille." The truth was far more complex. Humanity had been preparing for this moment for decades, quietly, methodically, without the knowledge of the general population. The deep space research stations, the seemingly random technological developments, the global network of quantum communication relays, all of it was part of a grand hidden strategy. The first visual confirmation came 17 minutes after the initial energy signature detection. The alien fleet emerged from what humans would later call quantum slip space, a method of faster-than-light travel that made their previous understanding of physics look like primitive speculation. It was beautiful and terrifying. Massive constructs of metallic and energy-based technologies stretched across millions of kilometers. Each vessel looked like a living thing, organic and mechanical simultaneously, with tendrils of energy and matter that seemed to breathe and pulse with an alien intelligence. Zornak Collective, RIA announced, pulling data from deep encrypted databases. Galactic Threat Index, maximum. Recorded interactions with 372 known civilizations. Survival rate of contacted species, 0.03%. Elena's augmented eyes, part biological, part quantum-enhanced optical sensors, tracked the fleet's approach. Each vessel was a world unto itself, with technologies that would have seemed like magic to humans just a generation ago. "They're not here to make first contact," Elena said quietly. "They're here to assess, to categorize, to determine our worth as a species." Dr. Hassan's hand trembled slightly on the communication console. "How do you know?" Elena's smile was a dangerous thing, equal parts calculation and defiance. "Because that's what predators do before they hunt." The quantum communication array began to pulse, not with a message of surrender, not with a plea for mercy, but with a signal that would echo through the galaxy, a signal that would make the universe itself take notice. Humanity was ready. The first satellite died at 3:42 UTC. It wasn't just any satellite. The Deep Space Research Platform represented years of international collaboration, millions of dollars of cutting-edge technology, and countless hours of human innovation. When the Zornak's first plasma burst tore through its protective shielding, something extraordinary happened. In Tokyo, Dr. Akira Tanaka's fingers froze above his quantum computing array. The destruction triggered a protocol that had been years in the making, a global communication network so complex, so intricately designed that it made traditional internet infrastructure look like children's tin can telephones. "Initiate Chimera Protocol," he whispered. Thousands of kilometers away, in a nondescript server farm outside Cape Town, a team of engineers watched as their seemingly mundane communication relays began to transform. What appeared to be standard telecommunications equipment started to reconfigure, nanomaterials shifting, quantum entanglement networks coming online with a precision that defied conventional understanding. In Silicon Valley, Dr. Maya Patel and her team of AI researchers had been waiting for this moment. Their adaptive combat algorithms, technologies that had been developed under the guise of advanced machine learning and communication systems, were about to be tested in the most extreme scenario imaginable. "They've taken the bait," Maya muttered, her augmented reality display showing a complex web of potential responses. Each potential action was a quantum-calculated probability, a living strategy that could adapt faster than any traditional military command structure. The global response was not a military mobilization in the traditional sense. It was a systemic, networked reaction that transformed every piece of human technology into a potential weapon of defense. Underwater communication cables began to pulse with encoded signals. Deep-sea mining drones near the Mariana Trench recalibrated their systems, transforming from industrial equipment to potential defensive platforms. Satellite networks that had seemed dormant suddenly came alive, not with weapons, but with something far more dangerous: information. In the underground command center beneath NORAD, General Marcus Wright watched the global network come alive. This wasn't just a military response. This was humanity's collective immune system activating. "They don't understand what they've started," he said to no one in particular. The Zornak fleet continued its approach, confident in their technological superiority. Each of their sensors painted a picture of a primitive civilization, scattered, disorganized, ripe for conquest. They saw isolated research stations, seemingly disconnected communication networks, a species barely capable of exploring its own solar system. They were catastrophically wrong. Every destroyed satellite triggered a cascade of adaptive responses. The global network wasn't just communicating, it was learning, analyzing, preparing. Each moment of destruction became a data point, a learning opportunity that was instantly distributed across humanity's hidden infrastructure. In orbital stations, on deep space platforms, within submarine research facilities, and in quantum computing centers across the planet, humans were doing something the Zornak could not comprehend. They were turning the very act of invasion into a tactical advantage. Dr. Tanaka's quantum array in Tokyo began to pulse with a frequency that would have looked like random noise to any external observer. But it was a message, a call to action that was simultaneously everywhere and nowhere. The first wave of the human response wasn't a weapon. It was information. Detailed scans of the Zornak fleet began to compile, not just visual data, but quantum-level information that probed the very fundamental structures of the alien technology. Each destroyed satellite became a sacrificial probe, sending back critical intelligence that was instantly analyzed, distributed, and transformed into potential defensive strategies. Maya Patel's AI systems were already developing counter-algorithms, predictive models that could anticipate the Zornak's next moves with terrifying accuracy. What looked like random computational processes were actually the first stages of a global adaptive defense mechanism. General Wright allowed himself a slight smile. The Zornak thought they were conducting a routine invasion assessment. They had no idea they were walking into a trap that had been decades in the making. Humanity wasn't just preparing to fight. They were preparing to demonstrate that they were something entirely unexpected. Dr. Marcus Chen's fingers danced across the holographic interface, each movement a precise mathematical symphony. The Quantum Computing Center was a cathedral of human innovation, hidden deep beneath the Atacama Desert, its existence known to fewer than a dozen people on the entire planet. Initiation sequence confirmed, he muttered, his voice barely a whisper. The first Zornak ship went dark exactly 17 minutes and 32 seconds after their initial attack on the human satellite. Then another. Then 10 more. It wasn't just a battle. It was a complete systemic deconstruction that the aliens couldn't comprehend. The quantum viruses weren't traditional malware. They were living algorithms, adaptive intelligence packets that could penetrate the most sophisticated alien encryption systems. Each virus was a miniature ecosystem of code, capable of learning, adapting, and spreading faster than any defensive system could track. In the command center of the lead Zornak vessel, Commander Vorlak watched in mounting horror as his ship's systems began to disintegrate. What had seemed like a routine pacification mission was turning into something utterly incomprehensible. Diagnostic systems are failing, his primary technician reported, mandibles clicking with increasing panic. The intrusion, it's not just breaking through our firewalls, it's rewriting them. The quantum viruses didn't just attack, they understood. Each line of alien code became a potential entry point. The viruses moved like liquid intelligence, finding microscopic vulnerabilities that the Zornak hadn't even conceived could exist. They weren't just breaking through defenses, they were learning the entire technological language of the alien fleet. Dr. Chen watched the global network of quantum relays, seeing the attack unfold like a living organism. What looked like random data bursts to an outside observer was actually a coordinated planet-wide assault that redefined the very concept of technological warfare. They're using their own communication networks against them, Maya Patil observed, joining Chen in the underground facility. Her augmented reality display showed the progression of the attack in real time, a beautiful, terrifying dance of information and destruction. The Zornak fleet had encountered resistance before. They had subjugated civilizations across hundreds of star systems, but they had never encountered anything like this. Each ship's defensive systems became a liability. The quantum viruses didn't just penetrate, they transformed. Communication channels became conduits of destruction. Propulsion systems turned into potential weapons. The very technology that made the Zornak fleet powerful was now being used to tear it apart from the inside. Commander Vorlak's primary communication officer suddenly jerked back from the control interface, quantum burn neural implants smoking. "We're being dismantled," he gasped. "Not destroyed. Dismantled." It was a critical distinction. The human attack wasn't about pure destruction. It was a surgical, almost scientific deconstruction of the Zornak technological infrastructure. Every system was being analyzed, understood, and potentially repurposed. In orbit around Earth, the seemingly primitive communication satellites began to reconfigure. Nanomaterial hulls shifted, quantum entanglement networks came online. What had appeared to be simple research equipment transformed with a precision that defied conventional understanding. "We're collecting more data in these moments than we have in the previous decade of deep space research," Dr. Chen said, a note of excitement creeping into his typically measured voice. The quantum viruses were more than weapons. They were the most advanced research tools humanity had ever created. By the time an hour had passed, 17 Zornak vessels had been completely neutralized. Not destroyed. Neutralized. Their systems were now open books, their technological secrets laid bare for human analysis. Commander Vorlak realized something that would fundamentally change the Zornak understanding of technological warfare. These humans weren't just defending themselves. They were studying. And in the cold calculus of galactic conflict, knowledge was always the most dangerous weapon. The research facility in the Canadian Arctic looked like nothing more than a standard geological monitoring station. Beneath its innocuous exterior, Commander Aisha O'Keefe watched as the first wave of adapted human defense platforms prepared to launch. What had begun as deep space mining equipment, communication satellites, and research probes were now weapons of unprecedented complexity. The transformation was happening in real time, each system learning and adapting faster than any traditional military hardware could even process. Incoming Zornak plasma torpedoes spread. Her AI assistant, NeoVA, announced. The holographic display showed a devastating wave of energy weapons approaching, each torpedo capable of vaporizing entire planetary populations in previous encounters. Aisha's fingers moved across the quantum interface. Redirect and repurpose, she commanded. The first torpedo never reached its intended target. Instead, the weapon's own energy signature was captured, analyzed, and transformed. The mining drones that had once extracted rare minerals from asteroid fields now became adaptive shield generators. Quantum entanglement networks turned the incoming plasma into a navigational hazard for the Zornak fleet itself. Dr. Elias Rodriguez, leading the technological adaptation team, watched in near disbelief as their theories became reality. Each weapon is a learning opportunity, he muttered, fingers flying across multiple holographic interfaces. The Zornak had a fatal assumption about technological warfare. They believed innovation was a linear process, that technological superiority was something achieved and then maintained. Humanity knew better. Innovation was a living, breathing ecosystem of constant adaptation. A gravimetric disruption field, a weapon that had obliterated countless civilizations, approached the human defensive line. Traditional military doctrine would suggest evasion or desperate shielding. The human response was something entirely different. The field was captured. Not deflected. Not blocked. Captured. Within milliseconds, the Zornak's most advanced weapon was being reverse-engineered. The gravimetric principles were being understood, mapped, and then transformed into something entirely new. What had been a weapon of destruction became a tool of unprecedented scientific understanding. They're treating our entire fleet as a research platform. The lead Zornak tactical analyst reported, mandibles clicking with a mixture of fear and grudging respect. They're not just defending. They're learning. In orbit, what appeared to be a simple communications array began to reconfigure. Nanomaterials shifted, quantum processors realigned. A weapon designed to shatter planetary defenses found itself transformed into a diagnostic tool, its energy signature mapped and understood with terrifying precision. Aisha watched the global network of human defenders. This wasn't a traditional military response. This was something else entirely, a living, breathing technological immune system that could learn, adapt, and transform faster than any conventional warfare model. Dr. Rodriguez's team was doing something unprecedented. They weren't just creating countermeasures. They were building a comprehensive understanding of alien technology that went beyond any previous first contact scenario in galactic history. Each incoming weapon is becoming part of our technological vocabulary, he explained to a stunned group of international observers. We're not just defending. We're expanding the entire human understanding of physics, of technology, of the fundamental nature of universal interaction. The Zornak fleet found itself in an impossible situation. Every weapon, every defensive system, every technological advantage became a potential point of vulnerability. The humans weren't just fighting back. They were turning the entire conflict into the most extensive technological research project in galactic history. A quantum communication burst from the Canadian Arctic facility sent a message that would echo through the galaxy. It wasn't a declaration of war. It was an invitation to understand. Commander Aisha O'Keefe allowed herself the smallest of smiles. The universe was about to learn something fundamental about humanity. We don't just survive. We evolve. The transmission went out across 1,000 alien communication bands. It wasn't a threat. It wasn't a negotiation. It was a complete deconstruction of the Zornak Collective's mythology of invincibility. Dr. Maya Patil sat in the Global Communication Hub, her fingers dancing across quantum interfaces that looked more like living art than technological equipment. Around her, a team of linguists, psychologists, and data specialists worked with a precision that bordered on the mystical. "We're not just sending a message," she explained to General Marcus Wright, who observed the operation with a mixture of fascination and barely contained excitement. "We're dismantling their entire conceptual framework." The first wave of transmissions was a masterpiece of psychological warfare. Footage showed Zornak ships being systematically dismantled, not through brute force, but through an elegant, almost surgical technological manipulation that defied their understanding of conflict. But it wasn't just raw data. It was a narrative. Each transmission was carefully crafted to show not just human technological capability, but human adaptability. Suppressed civilizations across the galaxy watched in awe as the supposedly primitive humans demonstrated a level of strategic thinking that defied comprehension. The Zornak had a fatal weakness. They understood technology, they understood warfare, but they had never truly understood the concept of narrative. In the communication center, a linguist named Dr. Elena Chaves worked on something unprecedented. "We're translating more than language," she told her colleagues. "We're translating context, intention, the very way we understand conflict." Each transmission became a weapon more powerful than any plasma torpedo or gravimetric disruptor. It showed the Zornak not as invincible conquerors, but as fundamentally limited beings trapped in their own technological paradigm. On planets across the galaxy, civilizations that had been subjugated for generations began to watch. The Zornak had ruled through a carefully constructed mythology of superiority. Humanity was systematically dismantling that mythology, transmission by transmission. General Wright understood the strategy immediately. "We're not just fighting," he said to Maya Patil. "We're inspiring." The Zornak command structure began to fracture, not through direct military action, but through something far more insidious: doubt. Commander Vorlak received the transmissions with mounting horror. Each piece of footage showed not just human technological capability, but human resilience. Ships that should have been destroyed were instead being transformed. Weapons that should have been fatal became tools of understanding. "They're rewriting the entire concept of technological conflict," his chief strategist reported, mandibles clicking with a mixture of fear and grudging respect. The transmissions weren't just showing what humans could do. They were showing what resistance could look like. On Earth, the operation was coordinated with a precision that seemed almost supernatural. Data centers in Tokyo, quantum communication arrays in the Atacama Desert, advanced research facilities in Cape Town, all worked in a perfect, synchronized dance. Dr. Maya Patel's team had done something unprecedented. They weren't just sending information. They were creating a narrative that would echo through the galaxy. The myth of Zornak invincibility was crumbling, and they were broadcasting every moment of its destruction. Suppressed civilizations began to see something they had never imagined possible. Resistance wasn't just an action. It was an art form. The humans weren't just fighting. They were transforming the very concept of conflict. "We're giving hope a technological language," Maya muttered, watching the transmission matrices spread across galactic communication networks. The universe was watching, and humanity was rewriting the rules. Dr. Marcus Chen stood at the epicenter of humanity's most audacious plan. The Quantum Communication Center beneath the Atacama Desert was more than a research facility. It was the neural nexus of a planet-wide resistance that would redefine galactic conflict. "Targeting confirmed," Arai's holographic interface announced, her computational voice carrying an almost imperceptible edge of anticipation. The Zornak's centralized command structure had been their greatest strength. Now it would become their fatal weakness. Humanity had spent decades studying alien communication technologies, quantum entanglement, and systemic vulnerabilities. This moment was the culmination of generations of hidden preparation. Quantum cascade initiating. Chen muttered, his fingers dancing across interfaces that looked more like living art than technological equipment. The attack wasn't a traditional strike. It was a systemic deconstruction so precise, so elegantly constructed, that it would be studied by civilizations for millennia to come. Each quantum communication node was more than a simple relay point. They were living, adaptive intelligence networks that could learn, predict, and manipulate faster than any traditional computational system could comprehend. The Zornak had believed their quantum communication infrastructure was impenetrable. They were catastrophically wrong. In orbit, Commander Elena Rodriguez watched from the Galileo Deep Space Station. The global network of quantum relays began to pulse, not with weapons, but with something far more dangerous. Pure, adaptive information. "We're not just breaking their network," she explained to her team. "We're teaching it to break itself." The first communication node went dark 17 milliseconds after the initial cascade began. Then another. Then entire sectors of the Zornak communication infrastructure began to collapse like a house of quantum-entangled cards. What made the human approach unique was its fundamental understanding of systems. The Zornak saw technology as a tool. Humans saw it as a living, breathing ecosystem that could be understood, manipulated, and ultimately transformed. Commander Vorlak watched in mounting horror as his fleet's communication infrastructure began to disintegrate. It wasn't just a failure of technology. It was a comprehensive deconstruction of their entire command structure. "They're using our own communication principles against us," his chief strategist reported, mandibles clicking with a mixture of terror and grudging respect. Each quantum node became a potential point of vulnerability. The human-developed cascade was more than an attack. It was a systemic reimagining of communication infrastructure. Entire sectors of Zornak space found themselves cut off, their sophisticated technologies rendered useless by an approach to information that they couldn't even comprehend. Dr. Chen allowed himself the smallest of smiles. This wasn't just a military operation. It was the most extensive research project in galactic history. "We're collecting more data in these moments than humanity has gathered in the previous century of deep space exploration," he told Ara, who processed the statement with her characteristic blend of computational precision and subtle emotional undertone. The quantum cascade moved with a living intelligence. It didn't just destroy communication nodes, it analyzed them, understood them, and then used their own fundamental principles against them. Entire command structures that had subjugated civilizations for millennia began to crumble. On Earth, in research facilities, military command centers, and quantum communication hubs across the planet, humans watched the cascade unfold. This was more than a defensive action. This was a fundamental reimagining of technological conflict. Commander Elena Rodriguez understood the true significance of the moment. "We're not just fighting," she said quietly. "We're demonstrating an entirely new approach to systemic interaction." By the time the cascade completed its initial phase, entire sectors of Zornak space had been systematically isolated. Not destroyed, not conquered. Isolated and understood. The universe watched in stunned silence. Humanity had just redefined the very concept of technological warfare. The planet-killer weapon emerged from the heart of the Zornak fleet like a metastasizing cancer of technological horror. Generations of conquered civilizations had witnessed its destructive potential, entire worlds reduced to atomic dust in moments. This was the ultimate expression of the Zornak collective's power, a weapon so advanced it could unravel the fundamental atomic structures of entire planetary systems. Commander Elena Rodriguez studied the weapon's approach on the holographic display of the Galileo Deep Space Station. Her augmented neural interface processed countless potential scenarios, each more terrifying than the last. "AI," she called to her AI companion, "begin final cascade preparation." The AI's response was instantaneous. Quantum entanglement networks at maximum capacity. All global defense systems are synchronized. The Zornak believed this weapon was their ultimate solution, a technological pinnacle that would finally break human resistance. They had no concept of the trap they were walking into. Dr. Marcus Chen worked furiously in the Quantum Communications Center beneath the Atacama Desert. What looked like random computational processes was actually the most sophisticated defensive system ever conceived. Each line of code was a living, breathing entity capable of learning, adapting, transforming faster than any traditional computational system could comprehend. "We're not just going to stop the weapon," Chen muttered to his team. "We're going to understand it." The planet killer approached with devastating precision. Quantum sensors across human-controlled space tracked its progression, a weapon that had ended countless civilizations, now zeroing in on Earth. Commander Vorlak watched from the bridge of the primary Zornak command vessel, a mixture of anticipation and growing unease filling his consciousness. The humans had defied every expectation, but surely this was the moment of ultimate triumph. He was catastrophically wrong. As the weapon reached its final approach vector, something extraordinary began to happen. The humans weren't just defending. They were transforming the very nature of the weapon itself. Quantum entanglement networks began to interface with the planet killer's core systems. It wasn't a traditional hacking attempt. It was a complete systemic deconstruction that rewrote the fundamental principles of the weapon's operational parameters. "They're not blocking the weapon," Dr. Chen's lead researcher observed in stunned amazement. "They're repurposing it." The transformation was unlike anything in galactic history. The planet killer's destructive potential began to shift, its massive energy systems being redirected with a precision that defied conventional understanding. What had been a weapon of ultimate destruction became something else entirely, a tool of unprecedented scientific discovery. Quantum relays across human-controlled space synchronized with mathematical perfection. The weapon's own energy began to be captured, analyzed, understood. Each microsecond revealed layers of technological complexity that would take generations to fully comprehend. Commander Elena Rodriguez watched the transformation with a mixture of scientific curiosity and strategic calculation. "We're not just defending," she said quietly. "We're expanding the boundaries of human understanding." The Zornak fleet watched in mounting horror as their ultimate weapon was systematically dismantled, not through destruction, but through a level of technological interaction they could not comprehend. Vorlak's communication officer turned to him, mandibles clicking with a mixture of terror and reluctant respect. "They're not destroying the weapon," he reported. "They're learning from it." As the final moments of the confrontation approached, humanity demonstrated something far more powerful than military might. They showed an ability to transform conflict into understanding, to turn the most destructive technology into a potential tool of discovery. The planet killer weapon, once the ultimate expression of the Zornak collective's power, began to pulse with a new energy. Not destructive, not threatening, but alive with possibility. The universe watched in stunned silence as humanity redefined the very concept of technological conflict. The silence was profound. In the aftermath of the conflict, the universe held its collective breath. The Zornak collective, once the most feared empire in known space, had been systematically transformed, not through brutal conquest, but through an unprecedented display of collaborative human innovation. Commander Elena Rodriguez stood on the bridge of the Galileo Deep Space Station, watching as the remnants of the Zornak fleet drifted like wounded leviathans. Dr. Marcus Chen and Dr. Maya Patel joined her, each bearing the weight of a moment that would redefine galactic civilization. "We didn't just win a war," Elena said quietly. "We opened a door." The transformation was unlike any first contact scenario in galactic history. The Zornak hadn't been destroyed. They had been fundamentally reimagined. Their centralized hierarchical structure dissolved, replaced by a decentralized network of independent systems that bore the unmistakable mark of human philosophical approach. Dr. Kamil Hassan, the station's chief xenobiologist, analyzed the initial data streams. "It's remarkable," he told his colleagues. "We've essentially performed a systemic intervention, not just on their technology, but on their entire social and cultural infrastructure." Across the galaxy, civilizations that had been suppressed for generations began to emerge. The quantum communication networks that humanity had developed during the conflict became conduits of liberation. Information flowed freely, breaking down the centuries of isolation imposed by the Zornak Collective. General Marcus Wright received reports from communication centers across Earth. This wasn't a traditional military victory. It was a philosophical revolution expressed through technological means. "We're introducing a new paradigm," he explained to a gathering of international leaders. "Conflict as a method of understanding. Technological interaction as a form of communication." The Zornak leadership, what remained of it, found themselves in an unprecedented situation. Commander Vorlak, once a symbol of imperial might, now represented something entirely different. The humans hadn't conquered. They had invited. Invited to understand. Invited to collaborate. Invited to reimagine. Quantum research centers across Earth began to receive transmissions from former Zornak systems. Not threats, not remnants of conflict, but genuine requests for understanding. Scientific inquiries, philosophical explorations. Dr. Maya Patel's team worked tirelessly to establish new communication protocols. "We're not just talking to them," she explained. "We're creating a new language of interstellar interaction." The technological artifacts recovered from the conflict became the foundation of a new field of study. Xenotechnology wasn't just about understanding alien systems. It was about creating a collaborative framework of scientific exploration. Suppressed civilizations watched in awe. The humans hadn't just defeated the Zornak. They had shown a path to a different kind of existence, a way of interaction that wasn't based on subjugation, but on mutual understanding. "We've done something unprecedented," Dr. Chen told Araya, his AI companion. "We've turned a potential extinction-level conflict into a moment of galactic transformation." The quantum communication networks that had been developed during the conflict now became conduits of unprecedented scientific and cultural exchange. Research stations that had once been purely defensive now became centers of collaborative exploration. Elena Rodriguez understood the true significance of the moment. Humanity had not just survived. They had demonstrated a fundamental truth about existence, that understanding was the most powerful weapon of all. As the first joint human former Zornak research missions began to prepare, a new chapter of galactic history opened. Not a chapter of conquest, not a chapter of conflict, but a chapter of possibility. The universe trembled, but now it trembled with potential. Humanity had arrived, and nothing would ever be the same again.